Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. I hope everyone is doing okay and can hear me fine. If you can hear me okay and see me fine, could you please let me know in the chat and we will quickly get started. I could see people joining from all over the world. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support, continuous support, and we hope that we are able to deliver you the value you are looking for your cloud journey. So hopefully everyone is enjoying learning and keep sharing knowledge or keep asking questions so that everyone gets enlightened and everyone get to know uh, better what they knew yesterday. So I'll also have Parna with me. She would be joining and she would be helping us with the next track. We'll talk about those things. And let me quickly share my screen and we will get started. I'll tell you what we are going to cover today. And then obviously keep your questions coming as much as you have. So we are on week 7. We are into batch 04. It is 19th August today, and what the topics is coming off to today is this list. So we will be talking initially about fundamentals track, DNS and DSCP. DSCP I just included because I felt maybe some of you may want to know it, but focus will be on DNS. If time permits, I'll talk about DSCP also. Next, we will be having Parna, who would share with us things about threat remediation, and her focus would be on automated remediation. Obviously, cloud is all about automation. We don't want to manually keep on fixing things. So, she will talk about security track and threat remediation in automated fashion. And then we have Pranav, who would be helping us today with topics of software developers' life in AWS, that what these people do on a day-to-day basis, and we would be listening from him first-hand account of how a life of a software developer looks like. So pretty packed agenda. Let me quickly get started and feel free to ask question. Parna is answering question. Probably Prasad would also join in the later section of the session, but let's keep moving forward. Now, first thing we are going to talk about here is DNS, which is I'm sure everyone knows about, is a domain name system, and it is an integral part of internet. What the shape or form of internet we see today, it is probably possible because of DNS, or I would say a major portion of that is possible about because of DNS. So it is a backbone service powering the internet and all the services we are using today. Let's talk about how this service can be really, really helpful. Now, obviously, I wouldn't like to talk about analogies first so that you could relate those concepts into easy fashion. Not sure how many of you have actually seen this, maybe in photos, or maybe how many of you have actually used this type of phone before. So if you could let me know in the chat if you have ever dialed a number like this, and I'll tell you a funny story of my from my childhood where I played a prank about this type of phone in this type of phone. Anyone? Anyone has dialed these phone in past, and be aware that it would reveal your age. It would reveal your age like me, like, hey, I have seen these phone and I have operated it. So yeah, I can see a lot of this used a lot. Good. I'll share a trick which I played. Like, we had the phone obviously in home, and now I wanted to play some trick. I was like little intrigued by how it works, so I opened it one day, and once I understood the basic mechanism behind it, that how it was working, what I did, I made some changes into connection. So nine, sorry, uh, give me a minute, let me open that. Why paintbrush software few times. Yeah, thank you. Shanawaz have used it. Now I was telling you what I did in my childhood, and I tried to prank my family into it. What I did, I changed dialing sequence of 0 and 9. So if you had to dial 9, you had to actually dial 0. And if you had to dial 0, you had to actually change 9, dial 9. So I just changed the sequence of 9 and 0. And all of my family was trying to dial numbers, and none of it was working because I had changed the sequence. So then I was obviously reprimanded for that. But yeah, that was how I started using these phones initially. Okay, let's keep moving forward. So how this phone conversation relates to what we are discussing. Let's consider I'm in UK, so obviously James Bond is into every discussion we talk about here most of the time. So let's say in old days I wanted to talk to James Bond, right? What we need to do now? So if I have to talk to James Bond, I need to have his number. I know his name, but I know want to have his number first. So what I need now? I need a way to get his number, and I'm talking about very old time. It was not as Google era or internet era. So what I would do, I would be basically dialing a telephone inquiry office, and this was an office manned by people who would help me in getting someone's number. That time privacy and not sharing your number, that was not that complicated. You could dial in, you could give address of a person, or you could even give phone number of someone and they could tell you the address where it belonged to. It was that easy at that moment. But there was a telephone inquiry office, and if I say, can I get Bond's phone number, obviously they would look into their database. Probably they would have a computer or maybe a manual register initially, and afterward what they would be giving me the number. Obviously number for James Bond would be 007. And once I have hold of this number, what I'm going to do now, I'm now going to dial from my phone and probably talk to Mr. Bond, and that's how my conversation would be happening. So what we are seeing here, we are seeing two things here. First is I need to get my name translated into a number, and I need someone's help to get it translated because I do not know it. So what I do now, I have talked to a telephone inquiry office. They maintained a database of people, and through that database, they are able to deliver me the number. And once I got number, next thing I have to do is to dial that number from my own. They are not connecting me to Bond. They are giving me number of him, and now I could go ahead and talk to him. Right. Obviously when technology changed and when printed things become very normal, what happened that these telephone inquiries office were very complicated to manage, and it was not very feasible thing. What you would be we are utilizing here phone book. So the system where people were responding to you, that was replaced by this telephone books, telephone directory. And in this telephone directory, I could go and search alphabetically or by a business, or depending on other criteria like city or maybe area or something, I should be able to figure out a person's name and then respond back. And that's how we replace the old system of people manning the inquiry office with a telephone directory. Obviously this not was updated very frequently. Probably if I remember correctly, every year or 2 year this was published, and that's how you would be getting the new number of the people. So that was a way of working things. Now apart from that, once you have this type of phone book, what you would also be doing probably that you would be also maintaining your own personal phone book. Every time I don't want to talk to go ahead and talk to telephone directory or other people, so what I would be preferring, I would be keeping a personal phone book also, on which I would have number for whoever I want to talk to. I'm sure some of you have maintained these phone book. It would be a handwritten thing. You would have here alphabetical listing, and you for look for that particular person's phone number, and that's how you would be responding to that phone. So that's what we did. We maintained a personal phone book so that we do not have to go to telephone directory again and again. And that's how our conversation actually started. How it relates to DNS, obviously we'll talk about this now. And this is what exactly same thing which happens today also when we are talking about DNS. But now the concept has changed. Let's talk about what we are now looking for. So I'm now trying to go to amazon.com. That is a website. Let's say I want to browse, maybe I want to spend some more money, and then I want to go ahead and buy some products. So I want to go to amazon.com. So amazon.com is a name. I would be typing that name into my browser, and my browser would not know the IP address of Amazon.com. So, what it had to do, it had to initiate a request of, can I get Amazon's IP address? This request is going to go to a DNS system. We call it server, but I would call it a DNS system because behind the scene there are a lot of component behind that DNS service. So that DNS service would know what is the IP address of it. It's like everyone has to register their name into this DNS database if you want to be searchable. So if you want your website to be accessible by everyone, you need to register your website name to DNS server. So Amazon.com obviously would have registered their name to a DNS system, and through that DNS system, they are able to get a IP resolved. So what we get now, we get a IP address. I'm putting x.x.x.x here as a representation, and that IP address is now being delivered to my browser. Once my browser get holds of that IP address, what I'm going to do, my browser basically will be making a connection to that particular IP address, and on that probably a web server would be responding to me, and a website would be then rendered to me. That is the exact same thing what we did in the old phone conversation. And like we maintained our own phone book initially, what is going to happen here, that we may have a cache, and that cache would maintain that Amazon's IP address. So if next time I need something, I do not have to go back and ask the same DNS service because I have in cache. Next call I am making, we are going forward with this. So we will use cache in this case. So hopefully this is clear that how the same concept of old telephone system or getting a number got translated into DNS service also, because we as a human, we know people's name, we do not remember their number, right? So maybe you know one or two people's number in your memory, but others you go to your phone book. And now in today's world, this old phone system or telephone directory has been replaced by our mobile phone's contact list. So we just go there and get those numbers, and then how we are able to communicate things. So that's how what happens behind the scene in DNS. We'll go into a little bit more detail so that you have a better understanding of what is actually happening when we are utilizing our DNS service. Any questions so far? Any doubts? Anyone? Any confusions? Anything which is not clear? Let me know in the chat. And if everything is okay, give me that +1 also in the chat, and we will then keep moving forward. All right. Now, once I have this type of informational system created, obviously I have to maintain it, and there would be little longer process required because it's not like one server responding. We need a system which is represented all over the world, and that's why we need that DNS system. So we remember the James Bond example, and let's see now how that will be working into DNS servers. So let's say I'm trying to log into a service which is example.com, or I want to access it. For simplicity, I have kept number of 124 12.4.3.7. That is the IP address associated with it. Now you may have a question, who would give me the IP address? So when you are registering your domain, IANA, which is a central authority who would be giving you a number which is like this. Like in some countries, when you register your vehicle, you are given a random number for your vehicle registration, or maybe you have got a social security number that would be randomly generated for you. Similarly, there is a central authority who would be generating these IP address and giving it to the ISP service provider, and your service provider will map it to your domain name. So hopefully let's consider example.com is hosted on Route 53. So I'm using this representation here. So in Route 53, you could go buy or even register a domain name. Buy means we do not had the domain, and now I want to get that. Or another option is register here. Maybe I already purchased the domain, now I want to transfer it to Route 53. So that is also possible. So we could buy, register the domain name using Route 53. So now Route 53 knows anytime a request comes to example.com, I have to give a IP address of 12.4.3.7. Be aware, this is not transferring you to that website, it is just giving you the address. It is still on your browser to go and make the connection to example.com. So here I'm looking for IP address of example.com. Now the process is so hidden from our browser and from our naked eyes, we don't see it. But if you are using some packet capturing tool like Wireshark, you would be able to even capture every single request which is going in and how your name is being responded with. So hopefully this thing is clear. So we have a request for IP address for example.com. So what will happen first, that my request is going to my DNS resolver, which is my local ISP. Now this is a good example to go into command prompt and check it. So if I come here, this is my command prompt, and here I could go ahead and say, hey, I want to ping www.example or amazon.com, right? What is happening here? Some random website, I have made a mistake in typing the name, but this is what Amazon.com's IP address is being responded to me. What happened behind the scene, if you look here, let's go ahead and check for a command which is called nslookup. So I'll go to nslookup, and here I would say I am looking for address of Amazon.com. Name server lookup says that, okay, who is the name server associated with Amazon.com? So this is what I'm getting. Now, what I'm getting here, the first two line, it tells me that who is my server to go to. I may not be able to talk to the actual DNS server of AWS. So what I have to do first, I have to check in my cache. If I have someone's name in my last dialed number, I do not have to go and look for anything else. I would just go to my last dial number and redial it. That is what a cache is. So as I'm using a internet connection from Virgin Media, their cache service has become my DNS go-to point. So as soon as my request wants to go to Amazon.com, they first start looking for IP address in 194.168.4.100. This is my DNS server. If you want to know what is your DNS server, I'm sure most of you know that. So I could go ahead and say ipconfig/all, and it will tell me that what is the type of DNS service I'm using. See this thing here, DNS server, and these are the two DNS server which is provided to me by my service provider. Provided to me doesn't mean that I own it. It is just a reference point for me, and most of the time you will find at least two of them are given to you. So even if one of them fails, maybe someone else can be responding to you. So that's what we did, is we did the ns lookup command, and that's how we are able to get Amazon.com IP address. And if you see here, it has given me an answer which says non-authoritative answer. Non-authoritative here, it means that, hey, I know his Amazon's IP address, but I am not the one who is maintaining it. I just happen to know their IP address, and if you want to talk to them, go ahead and use this DNS name. So if you look here, what is actually happening, I am getting response from CloudFront service of Amazon, and that's how I am able to communicate to those servers. And maybe these are aliases associated, AWS www.amazon.com, tp.a random number frontier.amazon.com. So these are other options which are available to me. So I hope this thing is clear, that what I got an answer from cache, and that I got as a non-authoritative answer. My cache server here is not authoritative for DNS server of Amazon, but it knows about it and it is just responded to me. Now, I could also do one thing. I could say, hey, I am looking for www.amazon.com's IP address, but I want to go ahead and use this DNS server. So what happened here? I changed my DNS and said, hey, this is a universal DNS server 4.2.2, 8.8.8. These are commonly used DNS server if you don't want to have any private IPs or private DNS of your service provider. You could go into your setting, change your DNS service to 4.2.2, and as long as you could physically reach to this server, it would be resolving your name. Now, if you look here, this time my resolution happened through resolver.level3.net. I got the same answer, but someone else responded to me in this time. That's how we are able to understand how my DNS service is actually working. So I hope this thing is clear. And depending on which service you are trying to talk to, let me go ahead and talk about my website, analogiescloud.com. I would be getting, okay, this one is, see this, now I do not have so many records for my website. Here if you look, Amazon is maintaining so many IP addresses. These are all IPv6 addresses, whereas these are IPv4 addresses. They have alias records also, but for my website, I do not have those type of alias record. I just have a name server. I have this IPv6 address, and I have one IPv4 address associated. So I hope this thing is clear, that how a DNS is actually responding from cache. What if the request was not into cache? So if the request is not available into the cache, then your request will be forwarded to something called a root name server. All over the world, what we are using here, that we are using all over the world, there are 13 domain name servers which are created, and those domain name server, or that is not one single server, but it is a resolution, a service which is allowing me to communicate with these components. So what is happening here, that all these 13 root server are ensuring that I am able to talk to that particular service. So there are 13 root servers. Now, when I am writing my domain name like this, www.example.com, actually it is translated like this. One extra dot is added behind the scene. I don't see it, but it is always there, and that is representing these top 13 domain server. So there is a dot. They are also sometimes referred as dot server, or they are represented as 13 root server. And when I say 13 root server, it doesn't mean only 13 physical server. Consider like 13 cluster of servers for by which your resolution is happening, and you could find those information in a minute. I'll show you that is all the 13 root servers which are available. You could use those 13 root DNS server. I am searching on Google, and this is the list I come to, that these are now the root servers available, right? So these are all my root server, and they may be maintained by different companies, different association. Like NASA maintains one of them, VeriSign maintains, ICANN and White Project, VeriSign University. So this is like openly maintained, not maintained by one single authority, so that there would be no ownership right issue. All of these are called my 13 root DNS servers, as you see here. Right. So my request will be going to root server, but root server will say, hey, I do not know about that individual server, but I can point you to a person who would know about the com server. Right. So what we are trying to do now, so let's say if I go to, I want to go to a place, let's say I want to go to Amazon's office, which is in 60 Holborn in London. Now I want to go to that place. Now, let's say I'm in India. So if I want to go to that place, and if I ask someone in India that, hey, how I can go to 60 Holborn, London, they would say, hey, I do not know that. Probably you have to go to an international airport, and from there you will find a flight to London. So I go ahead and inquire, and maybe they say, okay, you have to first go to international airport in India, then you come to London. In London, then I would ask someone, hey, where is Holborn? And they would help me to go to Holborn. And once I reach to Holborn, then I would look for 60 as a as a building number that would lead to me my office. So if you're looking at, I am dissecting my request. When I'm asking someone, first I would say how I reach to London. Once I reach London, I would say how I can go to Holborn. Once I reach Holborn, then I say how I can go to 60. That's how I am trying to dissect my request in a form which can understood by others, and that's how I am reaching to my destination. Same thing here. As soon as I wanted to go to example.com, my request went out from cache not resolved. It goes to DNS root server, and from there my request is coming to a top level domain. So like we have 13 root server, similarly all over world there are top level domain, or we call TLDs, maintained, and these TLDs are ensuring that we are trying to talk to those servers like com, .net, .org, .gov, .in, .au. All these servers are called top level domain, and there are a lot of top level domain like .io, .info that has been added. So your request will be forwarded to by this DNS server and say, hey, I do not know example.com, but I know who is server responsible for .com, and your request is now going to .com. Once .com goes and checks your request, it says, hey, I do not know that exact server, because what I am looking for the web server on example.com. So .com says, I do not know web server's address, but I know who is responsible for this particular domain. So it responds to me with that go to Route 53 name server. I have registration, and in my list of .com, somebody has said that example.com is registered to a Route 53 service. So now my request by local ISP probably will be forwarded to my service provider, and now it is going to example.com. Example.com is the authoritative server. He is the authority who is maintaining the DNS service associated with my example.com. So he is the authoritative server, and it would respond to me with the IP address. It would be done by me or maybe my DNS resolver at local ISP. And local ISP would say, okay, thanks for the info. Let me also cache it, so that next time if somebody comes up, I would give the data directly from the cache. And now my request is resolved. I got the IP address I was looking for, and now it is up to me that first I would cache it, and once it is cached, I would make a request which will go to example.com. This is happening behind the scene when we are looking into these services. Now this is happening so fast we don't realize it, but actually all these components behind the scene are ensuring that we are able to get our name resolved. That's what is how DNS work behind the scene. I hope everyone is following along and understanding the basic concept associated. Right now, how my local ISP knows how to go to root server. So root server's name is fixed, so they would have an entry on that. Now you may put this information into a local file, and you may utilize all these things also. There is a question on, could you please help us with what is a CNAME record in DNS? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. Okay, we'll see that. What is in the name? Let's talk about a dig command. Dig command is a common tool which you may use to troubleshoot it, and I'm using here a dig which is coming directly from online tool. But otherwise, in Linux operating system, you may have dig command available. Like you do ping, you may be able to perform dig command also. Let me open this thing into a browser, and we'll see what happens when I'm looking for a specific domain name. So I'm running a online dig command. Right. So here I'm trying to, let's say, talk to analogiescloud.com. Now, what I could do here, as soon as I entered, it says, what is my IP address here? My IP address here is 212.227. What I got is called a record, which is called address record. If I have said amazon.com, what is going to happen? See this, these are all the information. So that's what I am getting as a response. This is my dig command. And if I want to go further, this is what the actually query was sent. We sent that, hey, I am looking for the answer for amazon.com. It responded to me like this: authority, additional information. If it was there, it has all been displayed to me. So as soon as I am looking for a dig command, that is helping me to understand what is actually happening with it. We'll talk about some of the records as we look for. Now, what are these records? Let's go ahead and talk about that. Consider your records as a number. Like let's say you call to a bank, right? And when you are calling to the bank would have one phone number. Let's say phone number is 812345. Right. Let's consider this is a bank number. Now, in that bank, probably you would end up into one single reception area, or you call it help desk, right? And then based on your request, you would be forwarded to different department. So maybe once you log in, sorry, once you make the call, there is a automated voice response, and which says that if you want to talk to savings department, press number one is for savings. If you want to talk to account department, talk to two. You want to talk to customer services, then talk to three. If you want to raise a security complaint, go ahead and talk to 4. So what I had to do, first I had to log into this help desk, and then I am redirected to different department inside it. Let's consider the same example in our domains also. So let's say I am maintaining a website here. Let's say we have a website, right? And in that website, I am, let's say, www.amazon.com. Now, when I am sending a request to Amazon.com, I may be wanting to talk to web server of Amazon. So there would be a record which is saying web server is running at 10, 5, 18, 3. Just giving an example. I may be sending myself an email address, so might be Ashish at amazon.com. Now I still have to resolve amazon.com, but I'm not looking for web server now. I am looking for a mail server who would accept my email request. So for mail server, I would be maybe having a different server. Let's say it is 11.5.3.9. So what I have in a DNS or a zone, I would be maintaining multiple record who are representing different entities within that domain. Like if I go back to the example we were discussing, what we would have a specific entity who is responding to me. Give me a minute, I'll bring it up again. So if you look here, what I'm getting, that I am getting response for amazon.com, and this is the address of amazon.com, 169.219.225.118. That is the address. Now apart from that, I have this name also, cname. Cname is a alias record, right? Like You would have alias record, which is basically presenting a pet name, which is more friendly, which is something you may want to use it for. Use it like a, maybe you have a name, official name, and maybe you have a pet name also. So CNAME or canonical name is your pet name. This is also being represented by Amazon.com. And if you look here, you see the last dot. That is also I was talking about. So here I am now having this name and say, okay, who is going to respond to me here, and see this. Now this CNAME is being transferred by CloudFront, so CloudFront is actually responding to me. So CNAME or a canonical name is basically alias record, which is saying who, sorry, CNAME is a specific record, not alias, sorry for that. Alias is little different in world of Amazon, but CNAME is a canonical name who is representing that particular person's name. That is what a CNAME record is. So it depends whether you have CNAME record or not. It purely depends. But if you have, you want your website to be known by multiple names, that time you would be using a CNAME record to connect to it, right? So that is a CNAME record. Now there are other records also. There is a MX record. So see this, this is a MX record for it. Now there may be a name server record. That name server is this. So Amazon.com is hosted through these DNS servers. If you look here, every record in Route 53 is maintained by at least 4 DNS servers here. And if you look, this is AWS DNS 60.co.uk, this is 39.net, 16.com, 15.org. What is happening here? That the authority of responding to requests coming to Amazon.com has been entrusted to these 4 name servers, and Amazon intentionally, or Route 53 intentionally, picked up servers from .net, .co.uk, .com, .org. Idea is, if there is something complicated and some internet services, let's say right now, who could respond to my request for Amazon.com? It could be responded by multiple of my services, if I say. So I could get response from .com, I could get the response from co.uk, from .org, and from .net. As soon as you create a record of DNS into Route 53, Route 53 distribute that to at least 4 servers, and those 4 servers are coming from different domain, and they may be running in different physical location. Let's say this is in US, let's say this is in UK, let's say this is in Asia, and let's say this is in Africa. Why? If let's say there was an attack on internet and due to that reason all com servers are not working or maybe not responding. So what happens now? Okay, we can then go to UK. US servers are down, we can get resolution from UK. UK servers are down, maybe I could get resolution from Asia or maybe from Africa. So intentionally Route 53 distributes your request across different services across the world, so that even if a portion of internet is down, you would still be having availability for your domain name. Now availability of domain name doesn't mean that your service is still operating. Maybe I hosted a EC2 instance, I would be able to get its name of EC2, but what if the EC2 itself is down? So that is a different story, but actually I am able to get all the name resolved by it, and I show you that into a console in a minute. So that's what a Route 53 service is actually doing. Right. So let's go into console and see what I could do with Route 53. I would bring up another console so that we could quickly go and see this information. Give me a minute. Okay, so I'm here, and what I'm trying to do, I'm on Route 53 dashboard. I don't have anything hosted as of now, and probably you would be surprised that Route 53 is one of the service of Amazon which has 100% SLA. So check for that. That what is the SLA we promise with Route 53, and why we can do it? Because we have distributed servers all over the world and all over the domain. So let's say I go to hosted zone now. When I'm saying I want to resolve names for my domain, I need to create a hosted zone for it, right? So I'm creating a hosted zone. For simplicity, I am just creating a private hosted zone, not a public one. I'll explain you the difference between them. When I say private hosted zone, which means it is only applicable to name resolution within my VPC. So when I'm having a private hosted zone, only people or component within my VPC can resolve to it. But when I had a public hosted zone, anyone on internet would be able to resolve the names using it. Right now, for simplicity, I'm saying, hey, I want to host a website, sorry, domain internal.com. Let's go ahead and see that. My keyboard is not working as expected today. Let's go ahead and see that. Internal.com. This is the domain name I want to register. Obviously, I can't host public zone on that. Somebody may have already registered it. So I'm hosting a private hosted zone here. So internal.com is my private hosted zone, and that zone has to be associated with a VPC. Who is going to resolve it? So let's say I say, okay, I am going to register it with, let's consider, uh, I have here Europe, London, and here I have a VPC I am associating it with. So I associated this private hosted zone, which is called internal.com, to my VPC. What happened because of that? Now, if a request would come, that would be resolved by this particular domain name which we have created here. And see this, what I was talking to. I have now a SOA record created. SOA stand for start of authority. So this start of authority is happening by this DNS server as we see here. Right. TTL stand for time to live, how long that cache would be maintained on your browser. So we are saying, hey, maintain it only for 900 seconds, not beyond it. But it could be your browser who may cache it longer. This is a recommendation. It is not a hard line. And now we say internal.com, you are served by these 4 DNS server, and as you see, it has picked up domain name from co.uk, .com, .org, .net, and that's how we distributed your request to the server. So any of them can respond to it, but now I want to talk to a server, and for that server I may have to create a record. Let's say it is my web server. So I'm adding a record here, which is www, which will become www.internal.com, and here I can select different record types, and I am calling it a record, and let's consider its IP address is 10.1.1.18. Just give me an example. So now I am saying as soon as the request come for www.internal.com, respond with the IP address of 10.1.1.1.18. Obviously I would have option for selecting a TTL, and I would have option for selecting a routing policy. What I just did, I created a resource record. Now my domain knows about a server who is www.internal.com. Now, how my client would reach out to it? As I associated this name to my VPC, let me draw that. So what I did, I have associated this DNS domain, DNS zone, which I've created with my VPC. In a VPC, there is always a dot to resolver. This by default happens. So as soon as your VPC gets created, one IP address is reserved as a dot to resolver. So if I have a machine here who is looking for an IP address for a particular name, so it is stored in a DNS zone here. So I have created a record for www 10.1.1.18. Maybe I have another record called mail, and that is 12.1.15. That's how records are. So whenever my EC2 instance starts here, it would be needing to go to www.something.com. It will send request to this resolver. This resolver is associated here, and that would then respond with IP address. And now my EC2 will make a communication to the IP address which I have listed. So that's how I have associated a zone with a VPC. That's how I could go ahead and do it. Okay, so I hope this thing is clear. Let me now ask a question here. So let's say this is a VPC1 and this is a VPC2. So this is my VPC1 here and this is my VPC2. What I have created a hosted zone. So this hosted zone is, let's say, is for internal.com. Internal.com. So this hosted zone of internal.com is associated with this VPC. So if I have a machine here who is called A, its name will become a.internal.com. But what if I have another machine here which is B? Right now B doesn't know about internal.com. Maybe it has no associated hosted zone. What I need to do now, what can I do? I could even associate the same domain DNS zone with two VPCs. So when a request from dot two of this VPC come or dot two of this VPC comes, they would both be going to the same domain name which I have hosted. So even across VPC, now I have facilitated the domain name resolution for my services. I'll quickly show you that into console so that you would relate to what we have done here, right? So hope this thing is clear. What I could also do here, I could go ahead to my hosted zone, and in that hosted zone I could say, hey hosted zone, you are currently associated with one VPC. Okay, let me go ahead and modify you, and I want to associate with you to another VPC. Could be cross region, let's say it is in Seoul, and in that I have this VPC. So then now both can understand internal.com and can respond to it. That's how we would be used. TTL can be increased or decreased. What would be its effect? Effect would be that how long you want to keep someone's number, right? So if my TTL is shorter, if I say TTL is 30 seconds, so what would happen? Because of this, I would have a lot of requests coming to my web server because I have cached in 1,000 location. They cached it for 30 second. Every 30 second, I have 1,000 people requesting me the same information. So that will be, if I have shorter TTL, I would have more requests coming to my DNS server, and I need to ensure I have sufficient capacity to handle it. If I increase it, so let's say I increase my TTL value to, let's say, 24 hours. What is going to happen now? Let's say my IP address was 10.11.11. A client came and it changed, it cached IP address of 10.1.1.1 for my website. Now, due to whatever reason, my website had to go through a maintenance, and now I have a different IP address 10.1.1.8 associated. So new people who are coming, they would be able to come to me, but this person who has cached it for 24 hours still would be trying to dial this number and it won't be responded. So now even my website is up, they may not be able to reach it till they clear the cache. So they both have impact. If you make a longer TTL, that would mean that there would be lot of time required for updates to happen. If shorter TTL, that would mean you would have more requests coming to your application, right? So hopefully this thing is clear. What we can do here is I can get hosted zone, and in route 53 I have other records also. Like if I go to my hosted zone again, I should be able to create more type of record. Like here I have a alias record also. So let's, sorry, cname record. So now I want that, okay, my request for abc.internal.com should still be forwarded to www.internal.com, right? So what I did here, as soon as someone says I want to talk to ABC, they would be redirected to internal.com, and that's what I did. I have created a CNAME record here. See this CNAME record. So this one is still responded by whom? It is being responded by my internal.com, and internal.com is responded by this, and this is the IP address of internal.com. So I just created an alias record for my web server. You can now go to abc.internal and it will still point me to my web server. That's how we are able to provide these configurations. So I hope this thing is clear and you have a better idea on how your things work. But if you have any other questions, you can send questions on BESA LinkedIn group or directly to me on LinkedIn. Should not be a problem. So I hope you are clear. So we talked about online dig, we talked about root servers, and through that we are able to respond to the services we have. So there are record, there is a triple quad A record which is for IPv6 addresses. There is a CNAME record, and then alias records are pretty unique to AWS. So alias record, let's say I want my website example.com to be responded by a load balancer or a API gateway. That time I would be using alias record associated, and there are various routing policies also which you could use for sending requests to multiple destination of your choice. Obviously we do not have time to cover everything, but at least you have got an idea on what actually is a DNS service. So that is all about my 45 minutes discussion on DNS. Hopefully you got better idea. I will be posting these slides for you to be consumed later, so you should not have any problem at all in accessing all these things. All right, so hopefully this thing is clear. Let's take a 5 minute break, and then we will be having a session by Parna talking about automated security threat remediation. So enjoy your time. I'll talk to you in 5 minutes. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone is back. If you're back, type in chat who is your favorite bond. Probably I have not included all the old bonds. I hope nobody is over 60 here, probably. But yeah, maybe I'm wrong. But let me know if you have any favorite bond. For me, if you ask me, I would say Pierce Brosnan. Yeah, I agree on that. Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig. Yep, makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you. Thanks for the feedback. And we will quickly move forward. I'll add Parna to screen, and then she would help us in understanding about remediation services. So give me a minute. I'll add Parna now. I'll remove my screen share, and I will add Parna here. Welcome, Parna. Thank you for our session.
Thank you, Ashish, and welcome to every one of you, especially the ones who keep coming back and supporting us. Thank you, everyone.
Exactly.
So I hope you'll
Literally.
continue the support onwards. Also, please share with your friends and your colleagues if you feel that they can also, derive benefit out of this. It'll be really great if you can pass on the message to them as well as and when the sessions come up. All right.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, give me a minute. I'll
yeah,
just quickly change the screen layout. Yeah,
sure.
I'll remove myself from the screen, Varna, and I'll let you drive. Thank you.
Sure. So I too will move away from the video so you can focus on the presentation as well. Just give me a moment. Yeah. All right, everyone. Welcome again, and I hope everybody is able to hear me clearly. Can you just give me a plus one if you are able to hear me? All good from your end? Okay, I'm assuming you can hear me. Ashish, can people hear me? Okay. All right. Thank you so much for your response. All right. So last week we covered some concepts about detection, right? Remediation is a very wide concept. Incident response, automation, remediation, reaction. It is a very wide field. However, I'll try to give you a 1,000 feet view into few of the methods that we can use. So let's get started. So first thing that one would want to know is what exactly is remediation, right? So I always like to start from the basics, assuming we have people here right from beginners all the way to advanced people. So what is remediation? So we spoke about three concepts last week with respect to detection. That was what is vulnerability, threat, and risk, right? So if you remember what they were. So remediation is actually the process of mitigating any of these weaknesses that we call as vulnerabilities, or trying to get rid of these threats which can impact our workloads. When we talk about incident response, is a very wide term. So a remediation can exist without having a incident happening. Okay, so it need not be a full blown incident. It could be just a non compliance which could be happening and impacting a resource which you need to fix. However, any incident response requires remediation. Remediation is actually the final or the last stage of any response that you have or process that you're following. Remember, we have a shared responsibility model. So people who've appeared for the certification exams would try to recollect that this is the illustration which you see for the first time when you are learning about cloud practitioner, for example. So what was it that we learned? So as a customer, your responsibility is for security in the cloud or within the cloud, right? Whereas AWS's point of view or responsibility is security of the cloud, right? So there are a whole lot of tools and services that AWS is giving to you to help you meet your security objectives, build up a strong security posture. However, you have to build that security baseline for your applications which are running on the AWS cloud. If you remember, I also spoke about having a baseline. Okay, what is a baseline? Something that you can compare against. If you don't have a baseline, you don't know things have gone wrong. So whenever there is a deviation from this baseline, it could be something like an external factor, some malicious threat, some configuration changes which could impact your systems, always need to respond or investigate. Okay, everything needs to be responded to by your security team. How do you do that? You have to be prepared. Okay, the first stage of anything is preparation. Once you have prepared your team, you've educated them of the ways in which you can pick up or detect those findings, you have to train them how to respond to them as well. Okay, so these are the three essential things. Apart from those, preparation, like I said, is the key. You have to have a plan in place, you have to automate it. So we will always try to reduce any kind of manual intervention. Okay, wherever there is manual intervention, it is prone to errors, right? So always prepare, keep your plans ready. Thereafter you're going to ensure that you're automating them. So there are different tools which you can use. You need to use certain services which will help you detect, right? How will you detect it otherwise manually, right? You need to make use of those services. We have services like AWS config, you have the config conformance pack, you have guard duty, you have inspector, macy. So make use of those tools. Every time you have a finding, learn from that finding. Okay, everything is a learning. Once you have that learning, you know how to improve and prepare yourself more. So first of all, you need to determine which are the methods you can use for this remediation. Okay, so there are again services which can help you with the remediation. So identify those. So those could be something like your event bridge, it could be your system manager automation documents, so which are also sometimes known as run books. You could have your CloudWatch events. You could automate the whole thing like a workflow using something like step functions, right? So identify ways in which you can do that. And of course, any kind of agile process, if you've thought about it, we are constantly iterating, updating things and getting better over time. So there are two things which we have: playbooks and runbooks. So runbooks are focused on a particular task, whereas playbook is the entire procedure how to respond to an incident, right? So keep on iterating and updating as you get more and more knowledge. And of course, if it's great that you've never really faced any incident previously, but you can simulate those in your organization, and you can have things like game days, so your team is better prepared. Okay, so if you've heard things like chaos engineering, that is also another way. So you create that artificial chaos, I'll say, so that you see how to gauge whether you're really prepared for it or not. Okay, so these are some of the basics for your remediation. So let's get started. So I'll be looking at some of the methods. So there are a whole lot of methods and solutions, but I'll look at a few of them and I'll give you an idea. So if you see, this is a typical remediation automation that you can do using your AWS tools that you have. So last week, if you remember, we spoke about Security Hub. So Security Hub is like your central place where you can gather all your findings from various security tools like Guard Duty, your Inspector, Macy. All those findings come and get collected here, right? So you might be having an organization wherein you will have a administrative or a primary account, and you'll have n number of member accounts. Ideally, you will be collecting all these findings into your primary account from your member account. Thereafter, all these findings need to be ingested by some layer. So that layer is what I was telling you about. Could be your CloudWatch events, it could be your event bridge, it could even be a step function that you're triggering via the event bridge. So this is your ingestion layer. Once you've ingested that event, you need to now respond to it. So what are the things which you can use for that? There you have your favorite lambda. So lambda can actually go and auto remediate. You can have your code written there to fix things for you. You could have your playbooks or your run books using your system manager automation, right? So that could be some managed automated document, or you could write your own customized document as well. That's also possible. Finally, how do you log what has actually happened? You need to keep track of things, so you should ideally use notification systems like SNS to send out notification that this has happened, and yes, it has got remediated, and CloudWatch logs to keep a trail of what has exactly happened. All right, so this is a typical architecture. It's not that you need to use this one every time, but this is a general one. Now let's look at some common techniques to do this. The first common technique is using your config, AWS config, and your system manager. So, what do you use config for? If you remember, config, you can add your custom rules, or you can use some managed rules provided by AWS. And those rules are going to constantly check whether your resources are compliant or no. If they are non compliant, you can actually manually remediate them, right? So, you can trigger off a system manager automation, or you can automatically do it. Always it is better to do it automated way, right? So the lesser the manual work, the better it is. So let's look at some of the architectures here. So this is a typical case wherein you have a S3 bucket and you have not enabled logging on it, right? So that could go and trigger your AWS config rule. Okay, so you have set up some say manage rules here, and it will set it off. It will pick it up and report it as non-compliant. And as a result of the automated action, okay, this is going to be reported. You are going to trigger off some kind of automation document using your system manager. This is one way. The other example would be, say, you have some instances which are not supposed to be made public, okay, and this was done accidentally or maliciously, you don't know, right? So a instance being made public could also trigger off an event such that your config will be able to figure that out and it will report it. Okay, so you could have a custom rule for that as well. And these non-compliant resources then can be used to trigger off another automation document. You could have a manual step in between as well, wherein you could have a manual step where you are approving or disapproving the step. Was it done purposely or was it intentionally done? So you can have a check in between. So these are two typical examples. So you can see this is a chain reaction. So if anybody's watched Home Alone movies, right? So the first Home Alone movie, there was Macaulay Culkin, if you remember. He was trying to prevent the thieves from getting into his house, right? So he had started this chain reaction. So as soon as the robbers opened the door, if you remember, there was this chain reaction and things started happening. Okay, so we are also trying to achieve that. So I will show it to you a little demo even on the console what it looks like, but via the screenshots also, just to get you an some idea. So if you see the screen over here, you can see there is a rule setup, EC2 instance managed by system manager. At the top you can see it, right? You can see there's a rule here. In the rule details, you can exactly see the description. So it could be a description made by you because you've created a custom rule, or it could be a managed rule. Even in managed rules, you see a very clear description about that. Some of these rules require some kind of information also. So now over here, if you see, this particular rule has ran and you can clearly see a particular instance has been reported as non-compliant. If you have not set up a remediation, then it will not automatically remediate. You could also do a manual remediation, so that has to be set up by you. So if you choose automatic remediation, it will automatically happen. If you keep it as manual, you will have to go and look at your non compliant resource and trigger off the remediation on your own. If you see here, just like I showed you before, so you have your non-compliant resource. You can select your resource over here and manually go in and click on remediate, and the remediation action that you've associated with it, say you are going to go and remove that inbound rule, or possibly you're going to send out a notification, that will be triggered. Or you can go via automation. Okay, so you can see this is system manager. You can trigger off a automation as well. Okay, you can go and click on execute automation, and that will also work. The second way that you do automation using your AWS config is using something called as the conformance pack. If you've already heard of it before, it is exactly similar to your config rules. It is just that it is more of a collection. Okay, instead of having one single rule, you will have a collection of rules, and you can associate a remediation also along with it. Okay, so you can pack them all together. It's packaged together, and it's like a single entity that you deploy. It could be for a single account, it could be for your entire AWS organization, and it is usually written in your YAML format. So it's a template. Now, this could include again your config rules which you have created. So it could be custom, or it could be configured. Say they are managed rules by AWS. Okay, so that's also possible. So this is constantly checked, and in your dashboard you will be exactly be able to make out which are the non compliant resources there. So again, I'll show it to you on the console, but just to give you an idea, so you could have a cloud formation template which runs, which is going to go and set this up for you. So it will go and set up the conformance pack for you, and even the resources that are needed for the remediation, it will set up that for you as well. So this is an example what it looks like. So when you have to deploy a conformance pack, so you will build it up in your YAML, and you can click and say deploy conformance pack. So you can build it yourself, or there are some best practice related conformance packs which are already readily available, which you can choose from. Once you've done that, so for example over here you can see there's a conformance pack related to your S3 compliance checks. Okay, now in order to run that, you obviously have to pass something, so you have to name the bucket. So that's why you have parameters also that you'll pass to it. So over here you can see the value is going to be the name of the bucket, for example. And finally, here you can see all the rules which are part of the conformance pack. So all these rules are going to be checked. And finally, you can check the compliance. So you'll see a couple of them are compliant, couple of them are non-compliant. So let me show you on the console what this looks like. Give me a minute. Okay, so before I start off, I kept on talking about event bridge. So people who are not aware what is event bridge, I will put these links up later. But generally, event bridge is just like a pipeline where you're collecting events from various sources. It could be from third party like some SaaS application, your custom application, or AWS resources. It's constantly capturing these events, and downstream, based on some rules that you're going to set up, it can do couple of things. Okay, so here are some examples. It could downstream call some target like a lambda. It could invoke some kind of EC2 action. It could even send out the event to a kinesis stream. So these are couple of things that you can do with your event bridge. Also, it is used generally for remediating any compliance issues. So I was showing you some compliance issues, so this is a good way of doing it. So you can have a look at event bridge if you are unaware what it's for. Let me show you on the console now. So over here you can see that I am inside AWS config, and I have couple of rules over here. So I'll show you a common rule which is restricted SSH. Okay, so the purpose of the rule is that I should not have SSH opened up to the entire world, so that a check is going to happen every time I have created a security group. Okay, so you can see the description. It clearly says this. Okay, so as of now things are compliant. I don't have any non compliant ones. So for example, right now, when I was testing it, I had created two security groups. Now for example, if I just open this up, currently I don't have anything, but say I edit this and I add something. Okay, so I'm going to open this up to the entire world. Okay, if I save it, after some time you'll see that this rule is going to run and it's going to report it as non compliant. Okay, so we'll see that after some time. So you might have set up some rules where remediation action is not set. Okay, so you can see some of these don't have set. But if you want auto remediation, so ideally you should go in here and say manage remediation. So that's what I did. And if you see over here, okay, so I have set up a remediation, and I've chosen a remediation. I've picked up one system manager automation which is already there, which is going and removing that inbound rule. So I've set this up. Okay, so this is going to automatically happen. Okay, what am I going to pass to it as a parameter? That is the security group ID. Okay, so this is how you set up your remediation. So this should happen shortly. Okay, so we'll see in some time. So this is how you set up your rules. Apart from that, I spoke to you about your conformance packs, right? So there are a number of conformance packs. So over here you can see I have set up one conformance pack which does not have any remediation set to it. Okay, so I have created a conformance pack for DynamoDB. You can go over here. So give me a minute. Let me show you that document where you can find all the information. Right. So if you go to this link, which I'll share later, there are some sample templates for different best practices. Okay. So I have actually used the operational best practices for DynamoDB. Okay. So the first one actually does not have any remediation along with it. And the second one that I've set up, that has some remediation also along with it. Okay, so you can go in here. There are some examples for best practices for DynamoDB with remediation. There is one more example with S3. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is what the template looks like. Okay, I hope you can see this. So there is a config rule over here. So it is checking whether auto scaling has been enabled or no. If auto scaling has not been enabled for my DynamoDB table, then some kind of automation has to take place. So you can see over here there is a remediation also. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm sending out a SNS notification. So an email is going to come to me saying that you have this table where auto scaling has not been done. I can make it even more complex, but I've kept it simple, just sending out a SNS notification. So that is what you see in the other screen. So if I take you back, okay, so I'm going back here. This is the other one which has, I'll open this up for you. I already have a DynamoDB table which I had pre-created, but I have not turned on auto scaling for it. So it should be reported as non-conformant. Okay, so over here, this in the last 3 hours, let me see if 12 hours it picks up. Okay, there's a score also associated with it. You can see this is showing as non-compliant. Okay, you can go in and see exactly the details. So over here, you can see the resource which was marked as non-compliant. This is the DynamoDB table, and I had already remediated it, meaning you can go in and click and say remediate. That is your manual way, or you can edit this and go via the automated way as well. Okay, so that is also possible. So once I clicked on remediate, I got an email sent out to me, and hence this is the status it's showing, executed successfully. And just to give you a glimpse of what that email looks like, just give me a moment. I will just show it to you. Just give me 2 minutes. Right. So I'll just show this to you. I got this email where it says a table with no auto scaling configuration found. So this is just a basic information, but it is an alert for me, right? So if you have an administrator, they'll come to know there is some Dynamo table which needs to be fixed, which needs auto scaling turned on. Okay. So this is what the notification looks like. The mail came to me. In the similar lines, I think the other one would have worked by now. Let me see if it's triggered it. So I had this rule. Okay, so it's still not picked it up. Okay, so unfortunately, it's still not picked it up, though we have a security group, if you remember over here, which is non-compliant. I think this one where I had created, but it's not picked it up as not this one. Let me see. I think it was the other one. Oh, I think it has already fixed it. I think it was too fast. So what happened was it went in, it became non-compliant, it became and then it became compliant again and went and fixed it. So we were not fast enough to see it, but the automation has occurred. Okay, now let's go back to some other ways. So this was one way. The next one is using your security hub findings. Okay, so in the previous case we saw the remediation was what, it went and deleted that inbound rule that I had created. Now over here we are capturing lot of findings in our security hub. If you remember last time session, it was drawing in findings from n number of places. Now in security hub we have something called as custom actions. So we can create a custom action such that we are pouring all our security findings into your event bridge, and event bridge in turn will have some rules which it will try and match to those findings that are coming in. If there is a match, then downstream it will go and trigger something else. So over here, typically you can see there is an event bridge rule which is going to call out to a remediation lambda function, and that lambda will fix few things and send out a notification. Okay, so let's have a look at the console over here. So just give me a moment. So in security hub we have various findings, right? So I showed you we had various findings. Hope you all can see this. We have so many findings, so we need to do something about it. So what I did was I went to the settings of security hub and created a custom action. Okay, so once I create a custom action, okay, so these findings will be sent to your event bridge, and I need to pass this ARN, okay, to my event bridge rule. So I went to event bridge here, you can see, and I created a rule. Okay, so this is the rule that I created. Let me increase. Okay, it's 125. I think you should be able to see this. So this is a catch all rule. It is catching everything, all the findings. What happens in event bridge, you can see, is there is a pattern I'm giving. I'm trying to show you, hope you can see this. So where the source of the event or the finding is from security hub, so I have not given in any complex pattern. I can be very granular, I can look out for certain types of findings. Here every kind of event or every finding in the security hub will be sent here. If it is sent, then what will it target? The target should be a SNS, or a email should be sent out to me. So this target is actually a topic, SNS topic, you can see here, which is sending out an email to me. Okay, I've subscribed to my mail over here. Okay, so now I'll just show you. Now if I pick up any kind of finding, if I select over here, okay, I have an option. Okay, so give me a minute. I have an option over here to actually send to remediation. Okay, so once I send to remediation, the automatic thing that will happen is it will send it to event bridge. Event bridge will match the pattern and send out an email. So I have done this just to keep things fast, and I have received an email. I'll show that to you as well, and I'll show you what that mail actually looks like. Okay, so it might look a little too much raw data, but this is what it looks like. So from my event bridge, all this information came. There's a finding. I hope you can see this. Okay, there is a finding over here which came all the way from security hub, and the details are given here as well. Okay, so the details are related to that finding. So this was the finding. Okay, so here you can see EC2 subnet should not automatically assign public IP addresses. Okay, so this was a problem, so that's why it triggered it. Okay, so this is how that works. Now which are the other ways? So this is one way I showed you. You can, of course, instead of having event bridge, you can even configure your CloudWatch events. That was what people used to traditionally use before event bridge came, but you can continue to use that. Similar to your event bridge, your event watch also you can configure rules which in turn could trigger say a lambda function, and which will do some auto correction. So example over here is, you can see it is going and doing something to a cloud trail. So typically, if you remember in security hub, we can turn on some CIS standard checks, right? So over here in your security hub, there are some standards we had turned on, right? So based on these standard checks, there are some rules which are applicable for your cloud trail. Okay, so for instance, there is a rule that you should send out your cloud trail logs to your cloud watch. So if you see this one, um, over here, so there is a CIS standard check which happens, wherein it says that cloud trails should be integrated with your cloud watch log. So if this finding comes, then what should happen? Okay, so I'm just showing you, there are plenty of other findings, but this is what that example is trying to show. So say for instance, it is not integrated with CloudWatch, there is a CIS finding, and that will trigger your CloudWatch event. That in turn will trigger off your lambda, and the lambda will go and auto correct the configuration of your cloud trail such that it is sending to CloudWatch logs. Okay, so that is one example. Another example that you can have is, say you want to send it to another third party platform, say like PagerDuty. So instead of having that lambda over there, what again we can use over here is a CloudWatch event. Okay, similar to your how you have event bridge, a rule will match that. It will send a notification, SNS notification, and that notification in turn can be sent to a third party platform like PagerDuty. Okay, this is also possible. Let me show you another service. So Macy, so last week we spoke about Macy. So Macy can actually find two type of things. You It can find some faulty or violating policies which you have applied to your S3 bucket, or it can also find some sensitive data. Okay, so that also it can do. So two of those things. Now Macy on its own by default also integrates with your event bridge, so it automatically sends that. So if you see, I'll show you on the console over here. So Macy by itself, let me try and increase this. So whenever there are any findings, it automatically sends to, first of all, this is automatically checked, publish policy finding to security hub. I went and later on went and checked on this as well. So any sensitive data findings also will be reported to security bugs. So you can see over here we had lot of findings last time. So all of these can be sent to your security hub, or by itself also, like I said, they automatically are sent to event bridge. So it says over here as well, if I show you in the settings, yeah, you can read here. So Macy automatically publishes all new findings to event bridge, so you can do it directly itself. So what can you do? So you can send out notifications, say to Slack. Okay, so you have your team which is constantly monitoring their Slack channel, and you can automatically send that out. So there are some interesting blogs related to all the topics that I'm talking about. I'll share those links later so you can go through them. But that is one option. Or just like I showed you in Security Hub, you can go and create a custom action like in the previous example, and then perform some remediation. So let's look at some architectures, solutions that we have. So one way is that Macy is reporting to your security hub. You can see over here. And in turn, what is the security hub doing? It is going to, trigger off that custom action that we've created, which in turn is going to match with our rule that we've created in Event Bridge. And downstream, the target could, in this case, be a lambda. So I had shown you an example of just sending out a notification. This could actually be a lambda, which could actually quarantine those objects which have been marked as sensitive, for example, and put them into some another bucket. Okay, so this is one solution. Another solution is, which I was telling you with respect to Slack. So similarly, as soon as Macy reports a sensitive data finding, it is going to go and send it to your event bridge. Event bridge rule will trigger a lambda. The lambda in turn will do few things. Okay, it need not do only one thing at a time. It could be sending it out to your Slack also. Plus it can do some other remediation actions as well, like quarantining that particular object which is marked as sensitive, and putting it into another bucket which is the quarantine bucket, right? So there are various ways you can do this. So these are some of the things. And finally, another example where you can trigger of remediation is using your step functions. So step functions is really powerful. So if you've ever built a flow chart, so all of you have IT background, at some point of time definitely you would have used flow charts. So you can orchestrate an entire workflow. If you've not heard about step functions, please go and have a look at it. It's really interesting. So let me give you an example. So say you are creating roles, okay, and you need to have a check on whether the roles are giving some overly excessive permissions. So we have the principle of least permissions, right, in AWS. So we have that rule: always give only what is required. But if you want to do a automated check that this is actually happening, and there are no permissions which are not allowed, which are being added to a role, then what we can do, as soon as a role is created, we can do a rule match for that event. And here event branch will have a pattern which will trigger off your step function, and you can see it can go through a series of steps, and then finally either notify your security team or approve or deny the creation of that policy for that role. So let's see how that flowchart looks. So it will typically map to this. Okay, what I showed you in the architecture diagram, it will map to this. It will go through each of these steps, as you can see. So step one, so possibly downstream there is a lambda function which requires to look at your policy permissions and decide whether or not they are permitted. So you will probably modify that data. It may not be in a suitable format, so you'll restructure it and send it to the next level. The next level over here could be a task, which is say a lambda. Over here, the lambda over here could be doing some checks on that new policy that has been attached to that role, and it will see are there any restricted API calls or actions that have been marked. Thereafter, the next choice will be, if you feel or the lambda feels that it's all fine, it's all within the security boundaries, then it would either go and send out a notification nevertheless to your security team that this role has been created. They still need to know. Or what it could do is actually go and remove the threatening policy and create a new version of it and give it only permissions for few things, such as CloudWatch logs. Okay, we want to always log things, right? It will create a new version and eliminate all the unnecessary permissions. You could also introduce a approval layer with the actual manual person intervention who can be asked. So you can send out a SNS notification, right? So this is like a callback how it works, and they can actually decide whether or not to approve this new policy. If they approve of it, then you can restore the previous policy which was created, or it will be denied, right? So either it will be approved and you are going to restore it, or you're going to send out the new version which you had created, which had just CloudWatch log permissions in it. And finally, this will end this whole flow. Of course, on the other side, if everything was fine, then you will still, as a good practice, send out a notification informing that this is the new policy that has been added to this rule. Okay, so this is just a little workflow. I don't have a demo ready for this, but I hope this made sense to you. And last but not the least, we also have a service called Access Analyzer, if you've heard of it before. So what does Access Analyzer do? You create a zone of trust. It's like people you trust. Okay, you surround yourself with those people only who you trust. So it is going to actually uh, ask you, who what is it that you trust? Is it only your account? Is it your entire organization? So you have to demarcate your zone of trust. Based on this zone of trust, it is going to identify whether you have given some permissions to external parties. Okay, so the external parties could be from other accounts, so it could be some cross account access you have given accidentally or maybe maliciously, or you have given some public access. So it will always try to figure that out. In a similar fashion, here also, as soon as the findings come out from your Access Analyzer, again, we have our favorite event bridge, which is sitting right there ready to capture all our findings. Event bridge rule again will match that finding. So matching is just like you saw the match, right? It is just like matching of your JSON pattern. It in turn will trigger off lambda. Lambda can maybe go and deny that extra permission that you've given to a cross account user, and also send out an email to your security team. Okay, so security team can go and check the remediation action which has happened. Maybe they can change it back as well. Maybe it was intentionally made that way, so they can also change it back. Okay, so that's possible. Or they might just approve of the change that has happened. So just to show you, for example, you have a permission over here where there was a permission given to a user, I am user from another account called Alice, right? Once this was given, it would trigger off a event to event bridge, and you can see that event bridge would obtain a finding. So it will look like this. So you can see the detail type, it is coming from your access analyzer, so it exactly knows where it's coming from, and it's got all these details, right? So this is what it will look like. So event bridge has got that, and event bridge could have a matching pattern, right? So that rule that I told you, so we are doing a pattern match. So it's looking out for a particular pattern, and based on this pattern, it will trigger off the lambda, and this whole cycle will complete. All right, so I think you've got an idea of overall how few ways in which you can do remediation. And if you have any further questions, please reach out to me. I sorry, I did not look at the chat, so I must have missed out if there were any questions. So thank you so much, everyone, and we'll go over to Pranav now. So please give him a warm welcome. So Ashish, so do we want to have a break, or should we move on to the next session?
I think we will keep on moving, Parna, and thanks for the session. Yeah, there was so much integration possible that I was amazed, like how all these services can talk to each other and can keep on integrating and enhancing each other's facilities and functionality. So thanks for that. It was a nice walkthrough, and we got a better understanding on how all things work. Thank you for that.
Right.
And Parna has conducted second session as of now. Next week we are looking for suggestions. So if you have any suggestions, if you want to cover specific topics for next week, let us know. We will see if we know the skills, if we know the technical stuff, we will obviously be conducting it. Otherwise, we have our internal list by which we will be picking up. Thanks, Parna. And I'll add now Pranav to the call. And Parna, feel free to ask any question. Prasad is also here, so I'll also add him when he has any questions and all. So let me add Prasad as of now. It's been long to see Prasad here.
Hello
Hi
everyone.
Pranav. Hi Prasad.
Hi, hi
Hey
Thank
Pranav.
Pranav.
Hi
you.
Prasad.
Hey, hi.
Okay, so we will start with the question. If you want to be on stage, Parna and Prasad, let me know. I could remove it or keep it. I'm happy with that. But let me first welcome Pranav. Hi Pranav. Welcome to the session and thanks for taking out time on Saturday.
Hey,
Good to
thank you.
have you.
Thank you, Ashish. And thank you for having me here. And by the way, great presentation from you and Parna.
Thank you so much,
Exactly.
Pranav. It's very late for Pranav. People, he's
Yeah.
based in the US, so we are really
Oh
thankful
wow.
that he stayed up and come. So I think I'll move out of the stage, Ashish. I
Sure.
think
No
it's too
worries.
crowded. So I think Prasad and Ashish can take it.
No worries.
All right.
I'll add it. So Pranav, where are you based as of now?
Yeah, so currently I'm in Seattle, USA.
Great. And you are a software developer, senior software developer to be exact. So walk us through the what it entails to be a software developer in Amazon.
Um, yeah, so as a software developer, you have various roles and responsibility that you have to play. And being a senior member, the roles and scope, it obviously increases. So if I talk about my day-to-day activity, then it is like starting the day with checking my mail to know like what different priorities and things have come up, and then um, any stand up or any meetings, and then prioritizing my work from the previous day and from the next day. Um, so as a senior developer, the responsibility is not only to just go and write code and finish some work, but you have to influence your team, and you have to make sure the project is going in the right direction, the deliverables and everything is in the right direction. So yeah, a lot of things comes, and you have to make check and balances between those.
Awesome.
Uh,
One question that I have, before diving deep into the software development, tell us about your journey. Introduce yourself and tell us about your journey, how you reached till here. And if someone is
Sure,
starting now, probably they might get some inspiration.
sure. Thank you for the question. To introduce myself, like my name is Pranav Chaudhary, and I'm from India. I'm born in Bihar, and I have been in many places in India. I completed my graduation, like engineering BTech degree, in 2011, and then I started my software engineering from a company called Subex, which is in Bangalore, and I worked there for a couple of years, and then I moved to Make My Trip. So I know you might be familiar with Make My Trip. It's one of the largest um, travel company in India.
Yeah.
And then I moved to a startup, which is a Sirion Labs, which is a B2B startup. And there I worked for almost 2 years and briefly at PTM. And then for past almost 6 years, I am in Amazon. I started Amazon in 2017 with their Hyderabad office, and then from there I moved to Delhi. So basically, I'm based out of my family, and I'm based out of Delhi. So moved to Delhi, and then from there, 2019 I moved to US, and currently I'm here for past almost, I would say, 4 years, and I'm in Seattle. Um, and during my years, like previous 6 years at Amazon, I worked with various teams, and I created various product which uh, is impacting the customer in directly or indirectly. For example, like every I'm not sure, okay, the lockers is not there in India, but it is in like US, UK, and other countries. I have worked briefly on that, and I have a space program which is launched in like initially launched in 6 countries, and then now I think it has reachability in more and more countries. So I worked on those impacting product. And at Amazon, we say like everything, like either internal, external, it's customer, and it's a customer obsessed company. So whatever we create, it makes a direct impact.
Amazing.
Awesome. And what
Lot of
technologies, like when you,
places. Right.
yeah, a lot of it.
Lot of
When you started
places.
your career, what technologies did you start working on? Uh, so yeah.
Yeah. So I started in 2011, and fresh out of college, I had a passion towards like C, C++, and all. But I will say, like, fortunately or unfortunately, I was placed into Java. So then I started my journey with Java, and that time GWT was technology which was like creating all the web pages and everything. So I worked briefly on that, and then database, majorly the SQL database, because I started with Subex, and Subex is kind of a telecom company, and they have a telecom reconciliation product. So it was a B2B product, I will say, and it was like heavy data centric product. So I worked on like the sequel version. I don't even remember now because it's been a decade.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so basically those were the initial technology, and then I moved to Make My Trip, and um, I was initial member of their Android team, and I worked on Android for like a couple of years, and yeah, and then like at Amazon, it is tech agnostic. So language is not something that we tied ourselves to. So let's say like if I have to create a service, or if I have to create an application, and uh, we do all the calculations, like back of the envelope calculations, cost, etc. And based on that, if it comes like, okay, go for Node.js or Python or Java. So based on different parameters, we work. So currently, if I say like I work with a lot of technologies, tools.
Cool. Interesting.
And uh, when it comes to software development, do we follow in Amazon any specific methodology like Agile or Scrum, or maybe it is depending on team to team?
Yeah. That's a great question. So basically, it depends on team to team. So like Agile or Scrum and Kanban. So these are the processes. Like so far in my journey, I have followed these processes. But currently, like we follow Agile mostly. But again, it depends between a team.
And when it comes to like what you want to achieve, how the soft or how a service team would be structured from software developers perspective. So let's say you are working for Amazon Lockers team. what would be the structure of that team?
So when you say structure, like, can you
So
elaborate on?
is it a program manager there, or is it a lead, or is it like four developer, two seniors? How it is? Means it's something which is which can be shared publicly, something internal, don't share. So anything which can be like talked about, let us know, please. That
Like
Yeah,
the two pizza teams, famous
yeah, yeah,
term that we
that's
have.
what
Like,
the
yeah.
thing I
I was about to say the same thing. Like,
yeah.
it's two pizza team, and it's like based on the project, it is amalgamation of different roles and responsibility. So if I talk from the ST perspective, only ST is specific, then ST manager, mostly I have seen at Amazon, like they in their two pizza team, they have ST1s, ST2s, and ST3s. Um, the ratio and all, it depends team to team, varies. And the program manager or product manager or the different TPMs or different vertical of job families, they will have like different teams. But when it comes to a service or when it comes to a application, then like various, not only one team, but various team interact together. But if I talk specific to the engineering team, then let's say like I have to create a website. Then the website will have a front end, a back end, and maybe a middle layer or so. Uh, and that website might be communicating with a couple of downstream services. So here, probably the responsibility can be divided among teams that, okay, one team can on the front end side of it, or one team can on back end side of it, and so on and so forth. So it all depends like on the complexity of the project.
yeah.
Got it.
You touched upon SD one, two, and three. So talking about like the roles and responsibilities at each of these stages.
Okay. Yeah. So there are clear guidelines. I will go one step further. Like there are like interns also. So we have interns in our team for I think 16 weeks, and they have to go through the boot camp, and then they are assigned some project which they complete and demo and all. And then comes the ST1. So uh, so the SD1's basically the responsibility is majorly to deliver some code and enhance it or write it from the problem solving aspect of it. As you go up to ST2, then the scope increases, not only from code but from like you're designing the HLD, LLD, and all for a particular component or area of the project. And when you go up, the influence increases more, like it's not now cross team. So at ST2 it is just for one team, but for ST3 it may be the cross team communication, resolving the ambiguity, identifying the risks, setting up the best practices, etc. So to set up the team for success, like planning for the project or deliverables and all. So yeah, so like if we look from like bottom to up, then the responsibility in different sectors, it increases. I hope that
And
answers.
yeah, go
That
ahead.
answers. Now I have a. Sorry, go ahead,
Go ahead.
Ashish.
No, go ahead
I'll hold on
for
to
your
my
follow-up
follow-up question.
question. Right. Yeah, go ahead for follow-up question.
Yeah.
Now, my question would be like, if someone is now looking into getting into a role of SD one, two, or three, then how the interview process would look like, or how they should be deciding that, which level they should be applying for.
Um, uh, so every job description will have that details, like what experience they ask. So certainly that is one parameters. And other is like, what was your other question? Like, was it
So, like,
for
what the interview process would look like.
interview process? Yeah. So interview process is pretty standard for all the levels. For one, two, or three, it's 4 rounds, and previous to that, like there will be one hacker rank round, which will have the problem solving, basically the coding round, and after that, you will have on-site, 4 on-site, and that basically. So one of the major focus on the interview is your leadership principles that everyone is aware. And every interview, like in these 4 rounds, will have one, two, or three competencies, leadership competency assigned, and you'll be asked that. And then these four interviews will be focused on your system design, your problem solving, your data structure algorithms, and your coding skills, like how logical and mental level your code is. And this like then the next question is like, how will you differentiate between the SD1, 2, and 3? So certainly, like the type of problems, type of solutions, how extensible, how maintainable the code is. uh, Based on those criteria, you will evaluate SD1, 2, or 3.
Yeah. There
Yeah,
is
my
one
question was
question.
also on the same side. Like, what kind of questions you get? Do you get very uh, funny type of question to solve, or is it a real world problem to solve in the code questions? What they ask you to write about? Fix something, optimize something, or maybe create the new Netflix? How is it?
um, so yeah, so like I mentioned, like the interviews are the problem solving and the system design. So again, that depends on interviewer and the team. uh, Not team, I will say, like the interviewer who is interviewing. So probably, like, certainly, let's say, like, if I am facing some challenge and that is interesting, I might ask that. But if someone is not, then probably a standard. So I don't have a list of it, but
Hmm.
probably that is a thought process. And regarding the problem solving, like coding and all, so again, some people, ST want to like create their own problems, or some standard problems is cured in such a way that it adds complexity or so. And then uh, yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. And when somebody is interviewing, like what parameters are used to check their code? Is it cost optimized? Is it performing well? Is it having security baked in? What parameters would be used to check somebody's code?
Yeah, so basically, like the best practice,
Hmm.
and the whether the code is checking all the base cases, corner cases, and all, and what is the time complexity and a space complexity. So that's like, if you are able to write a good code, but you don't know how to derive the time complexity or space complexity out of it, uh, that will be a problem, right? Or you're writing a code which is not extendable, or which is not reusable. So that is again a problem. So if let's say, like, I'm interviewing for SD2 and ask some problem, and you write a big chunk of file, a big chunk of code, and I just extended that question and asked, like, okay, now you tell me, how will this question, how will your solution resolve this question, and you started changing all the code. So certainly that is not something anybody look for. So maintainable aspect, your uh, logical aspect of the code, extendable aspect of the code, and all the base cases, and any edge cases, and how you do the dry run. And sometimes, like, problem, when you start solving problem, uh, you find it difficult, or you are stuck. So that point of time, if interviewer is giving you some heads up or some hint, how do you take that hint, and how do you pick up that hint and implement in your solution. So yeah, all those aspects you see.
Makes
Cool.
sense. Makes sense.
Ashish, should we
And
start taking the?
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I have one more question on that. So, being a SD, what are internal parameters for an SD? Like, you should have written 10,000 lines of code per day, or you should have zero external bugs, or your code should be optimized. What is your KPI as a software developer?
Certainly, writing a good quality code
Hmm.
is one aspect. And when you say, like, not having a bug, I don't think so that is something, because if you write code today or tomorrow, you will have some or other bugs. But if not having a bug, then it's really great quality, right? Um, but I don't think so. Like, there is any KPI to measure, like, every day you should do a number of checkings. But certainly, as a ST1 or ST2, if I'm not doing any checking for months or years, then certainly I'm not adding any value.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you for that. And I'll pick up some question from audience now.
Sure.
This is coming from Sanjay. He talks about how do you decide which programming language should be used for product you are creating?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I think I have mentioned this earlier. Um, so not only the programming language, but the infrastructure as well. So there are various aspects. For example, let's say I have to create a service which will serve like, let's say, 100 TPS. TPS is like how many queries you are serving, how many requests you are serving per second. So let's say like 100 TPS, and then I do the calculation that what time it will take for the particular business logic to execute, and and there are different various factors that you do the back of the envelope calculations, and based on that, and also one of the other factor is like how comfortable is your team, what is the learning curve for any new language. So let's say like everybody is comfortable in Java, but we started writing in Node or Python. Certainly there will be learning curve, and you cannot deliver on time, or that will add some latency to your deliverables. So based on all those parameters, we decide like, okay, let's go with this language or that language, and let's go with, let's say, Lambda or ECS or EKS or EC2 instance. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Good. And I have another question here, and this is somewhat repeated also. Are you afraid AI could replace software engineer in near future?
This is a very broad question, and I am not afraid of it. Certainly,
We
like,
get it.
yeah, certainly, if any new tools and technology is coming, then it opens a new door and creates new opportunity. So, yeah.
Yeah. And second is same on the same line. Do you use Code Whisperer? If yes, how has it made your job better?
Yeah, I have heard a lot about it. I haven't tried it yet, but I have heard a lot about it.
Makes sense. Now, next is from Rupa about learning. So, how you keep yourself updated because you are working on cutting edge technology. There is always changes happening. Obviously, there is a work required. So, how you update yourself? Is there an internal mechanism or is it left on individuals?
Yeah, so there is learning associated with each work that you do on a day-to-day basis, and also like as a team, like you have some learning sessions, KT sessions, and all. And at the end, it again comes from within you that what is that like um, you want to learn, or you want to contribute, or you want to explore. So uh, if you ask me like what my personal, so usually we have like KT sessions where we talk about different aspect. And if I am working on some project or something, so there we do enough dive deep, and we explore different aspect of different tools and technology, and that's how I acquire. And also like I love to set up some time extra for my learning, like I read some books or some blogs, or LinkedIn is also one of the source. So yeah.
Makes sense. And I have a non-tech question which is coming from Unni. It's about your movement from Delhi to Seattle. How did you arrive at the decision and how did Amazon help you to choose explore this opportunity?
uh, yeah, so um, this was not easy, like directly, just to pack a bag and move. But
Exactly.
yeah, after giving, after giving a lot of thought, I decided to explore different part of the world to learn and understand. Um, and then like I chose the team here, and I relocated here, and yeah, I had a couple of friends who helped me in settling up and all. So I would say like it was not that difficult, but certainly like can't say like not at all.
Yeah. And just to elaborate on that question from Amazon's side, Amazon has an internal process of movement. When somebody wants to go through one role to another role, there is an internal process. It is similar to what we hire from external. So internal people are not just picked up. They have to go
Yeah,
through the same interview process and same type of things, the same loop round, and then only a decision is taken. It's not like we get waived off from any internal thing because we are Amazonian. No, it is the same competition, right? And for movement, there is a process too. So people who move from one country to another country, Amazon takes care of that. There are teams who handle, like agencies who handle your visa processes, your transportations, your ticketing, as well as when you reach to the destination, your maybe accommodation, getting your kids into school, opening up a bank account. Lots of things are taken care by Amazon, or they facilitate this through the external agency. So they try to make it as smooth as possible. But from interview perspective, it is still the same process we all go through, like you all do.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for elaborating on that, Ashish.
No worries on that. Thank you. And I have one more question from Rupa. Is it like, do you follow test-driven development? Is it something what we do internally?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, we follow it.
Great. And is everything automated in AWS software development, or there are some manual checks performed?
So if we talk about automated, there are various aspects like full CI/CD. That is also part of
Hmm.
automation. Having a 100% test coverage, having like 100% test coverage for integration test or unit test, different aspect. So I cannot say like all the teams have or not, but if I talk about my team, my project, so certainly like we work in very fast way and we have to create services, new services and all. So it all depends on like the time, how much time we have and what are the MVP that we need to deliver. Having said that, like let's say we deliver the MVP, it doesn't mean that we don't work on those aspects because OE, operational excellence, is one of the like I will say like um, important pillar of the software development, an important part of our day-to-day life. So certainly we try to achieve that, and we have almost like 95 plus percentage coverage, full CI/CD pipelines, integration tests, etc.
Great. I'll
Excellent.
have
How
one
frequent?
last question. You go ahead,
Sorry.
Prasad, then we will ask the last question. Go ahead.
Okay. How frequently do you release to production? Like, I know Amazon is quite famous for that, but specifically, what has been your like experience?
Yeah, I would say like every week or so.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. And now talking about like bugs, like it happens as SDEs, you will be getting bugs. So do you sleep with a pager so that you get woke up into night and come and fix something?
I have like so again it depends team to team and it depends like on the product to product. Like if my product is new, then certainly I won't have that many customers and I don't have to worry about it. But like in my past, I have worked with a team where we have a concept of on call, and as you mentioned, like not the pager, but now we have pager app.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we have, and it can ring anytime, and it has a very weird noise that even your neighbor can hear that somebody is burning. And every issue has certain SLA, and you have to fix it because it is impacting customer.
Makes sense. Yeah, for people who do not know, there are different severities which is there. If the bug is discovered, there would be engineers called, people paged, and paged in the sense like called upon, and they would try to fix all these things.
Yeah,
Right.
we call on call basically. So
Yeah.
that's rotating, and there will be one or two on call depending upon the team and depending upon the influx of the tickets and all.
Great. Thank you. So I'll wrap it up. Any questions, Parna? If you have any question to ask, anything you want to share, discuss. Okay. So I think everything is okay. And I have a question from Chandrasekhar, a request actually. Is it possible for sessions on how to prepare for role using leadership principles? Uh, Chandrasekhar, Prasad and I just discussed it yesterday. So you are spot on. So we are planning our next batch to have all leadership principle and then go in deep on that and let people come and then discuss about it. So we thought about it just yesterday, and that's why Prasad is also smiling, like we had discussed this about this. So yes, we will include it into our next batches. So thanks for that suggestion. And if you have any suggestions which can improve your learning, your experience, your technical expertise, let us know, and we would be happy to include those things also. We are all open to feedback, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. Let us know so that we could improve, and we want to ensure that we call people like Pranav and others to help you out in understanding various aspects. It is not just the solution architect role in AWS. There are various roles available, and depending on your skill, depending on your aspiration, you may be able to go into different aspect of things. So thanks for that, Pranav. Really interesting, and hope you have a nice weekend. Hopefully you would be having some time. Being in Seattle, I can understand how much of activities you would be involved into. Sometimes people call that Amazon is a Seattle driven company because a lot of decision making happens in Seattle. So I could relate to that, how much you would be involved in and how much busy would be your schedule. So thanks for that, and we hope to
Thank
see
you.
you all around, and all the best, and hope to see everyone who is attending into our next session. As I said before, if you have any feedback for next technical track, next security track session, let us know, and we would be happy to accommodate that. Have a good one. We will paste this recording on YouTube, and you would be able to watch it afterward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Pranav.
Thank you all,
Thank
and
you.
thank you, Pranav, for odd hours. Like you're waking up till odd hours. Thank you so much.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and have a nice weekend, all of
Thank
you.
you. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, folks. Bye bye.